شكرا لصاحب المعالي المهندس حسين إبراهيم الحمادي وزير التربية والتعليم دولة الإمارات العربية المتحدة. صاحب المعالي، أصحاب السعادة أيها الحضور الكريم، المتحدث الرئيس الآن السيد ألين بيريتز، الأستاذ بجامعة ستراسبورغ والمدير العام للأبحاث بوزارة التعليم العالي والمسؤول عن الأبحاث والابتكار في دولة فرنسا.
Your Excellencies, Ministers, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, first let me thank you for inviting me to this and giving me the honor of giving you this introductory lecture. And because also I'm the first guest to speak, maybe I should, like in the name of my other colleagues from all over the world, thank the organizers for such a wonderful organization, and especially our friend Dr. Salim Al-Malik that went the whole way through for this. Now, my purpose is clearly, if I can have the first slide, then I'll pass them on, but okay. Can you just switch on the first slide? I can speak without slides, but it will be a little bit more complicated. Oh yes, it's here, but oh, they're here, okay. I thought, fine, thank you. I want to address some of the challenges that you are facing, and the introductory words of our ministers clearly set the point. In fact, does this work? Can I have the next slide then, please? Because apparently my remote doesn't work. Okay. We heard of this very interesting plan, Vision 2030, and when I looked at the various points of this plan, it's clear that I don't have anything to add. Those are very interesting and positive plans that I really congratulate you for putting up. I could comment on a few of them, but instead of commenting on the practical objectives that you have set, I chose to focus my lectures on the environment, and especially also, as I was asked, to eventually tell you about some of how France, where I come from, has tried to respond to those challenges, and maybe you will find some inspirations into our own experience. So my first part is really to the fundamentals. What are really universities nowadays, and what are universities for? Do we have those objectives? The French president that you might recognize here on this slide has set up, for example, an objective for universities for being a building block for Europe. And he made this speech in the Sorbonne University, one of the oldest universities in the world. And clearly this is something that has taken up. Universities are not just for academics. Universities are now for the whole society. And this is because there is a new role and new place for universities. Of course, source of new knowledge, but also providing skilled personnel, contribute to innovation, attract international talent, I'll come back to this, and investment, be agents of social justice, contributors to social and cultural vitality, and of course, also help to increase health and well-being. This is not what people would have spoken about of universities a few decades ago. Also, something I want to stress, not going into the detail of what is a university, is clearly to tell you there is not one single model of university. Of course, all universities should share the same values, and I will come back to this all along my talk. But their objectives, their ambitions, and of course, unfortunately, their budget can be set according to specific requirements. Those specificities are very important, and they can lead to specialization, to differences that are positive. Another point in this diversity is now that a university cannot live alone. Universities have to communicate between each other, not only within one country, but cross-border and all over the world. What I wrote there is, I think, very important. A purely national or local model is doomed, and which means networking, whatever the type of networking, is very important. Sorry, it doesn't work every time. Now, those were general things. Now, I just want to shed some light on a few concrete examples of how France has recently tried to tackle those issues. I will just very briefly look at 3 points: new laws, change in maps, that's mergers especially, and excellence supporting schemes. First, the new laws. We had 2 new laws in 1 decade in France. Those laws, and I won't go into the details, but they stress 3 very important points. The first one is autonomy. They increase the autonomy. Now the university presidents, I was president of the University of Strasbourg for 10 years, can now really work on a lump sum budget and allocate the sums to whatever they want. It's not the ministry that's allocating the budget. And also for the salaries, we have much more leeway in the way we can recruit different academics. The governance also is very important. It's governed by the law, because in France we just have national universities. The most prestigious ones are national universities. So the law imposes on us a governance, and the governance has seen an evolution towards more reactivity, and I would say less red tape and less paperwork. And finally, and I'll come back to this, the question of side policies. Try to coordinate what's happening in the country, networks and mergers, and this brings me to my next slide. The question of mergers and networks. A map of France, dots with universities. We had more than 100 universities, some very specialized universities, finally in the same city, almost competing with each other, which is really stupid, even for a country which is rather big like France. So you see, we have tried to group the universities. I won't go into the detail, and not only to lower the number, but to increase to decrease their specialization. We want to be back to the comprehensive university. We have in France, for example, something which is, I would say, really stupid, we have humanities universities. Universities that just teach humanities. Humanities are something outstandingly important for technology, for example. So if you separate the people that think about humanities and the people that think about biotechnology, you won't progress. So what we need is universities that group all those specialties into the same university. This is, sorry if I can, well, yeah, sorry. This is a general tendency in Europe. This curve is just the number of mergers seen per year, and you see this increasing number of mergers all over Europe. Now, it's just a French trade. And again, this is not an administrative point of view. This is an academic and strategic point of view that is very important at the moment. I will skip this table because we're a little bit late. Those mergers, and this, I'm taking this slide from a very interesting survey by the European University Association, EUA, are a part of a global strategy to increase the competitivity of universities with other tools like performance-based funding mechanisms, increasing efficiency strategies, and funding for excellence. And this different things are setting up a global tool, and this is why I want to just briefly summarize the third element of this overview of the French situation. That's the excellence supporting scheme. It's called Investment for the Future, and I think the title summarizes everything. if you spend money in universities, it's not an expense, it's an investment for the future. And so of course, in front of the ministers, I'll take the position of my colleagues, presidents of university in the kingdom or other ways. Really, we need the budgets. They need the budgets, because this is an investment for the future. Why? Well, the difference in France, the system that has been set up is something very interesting. It started from a report written by two prime ministers from different political backgrounds. Alain Juppé and Michel Rocard, one socialist, one conservative. They work together. The idea, and it comes back to your objective 2030, is to increase our growth potential. If we want to act on our innovation, we have to increase our research and development efforts, and we have to use higher education as an engine for growth. How is it financed? Lots of money, 35 billion and even more euros have been put into this system, and most of it in higher education and research. As you see, more than 20 billion in higher education and research. And this is a revolution in France. Normally it would go to industry. Most of the funds are endowments. It's a public endowment. It's like a foundation. The state puts money into the state bank and the university gets the interest, which means they can get money over a very long period. And we need time, the academics need time. And the calls and the money is distributed not by the ministry, but upon the advice of an international jury, and your keynote speaker tomorrow is part of this jury. He can tell you about it. And the government abides to the advice of the international jury. So it's excellence first and nothing else. And this is very important, and I suggest that you might almost imitate this. I will skip those slides because we don't have very much time. Maybe just come to another important element. The secret in all this is not to concentrate on just one recipe, on one tool, one element. The secret, I think, is to combine different tools in order to progress. And for example, I'm taking this slide from a fairly old report already, about almost 6 or 7 years, by the Bruegel Institute in Brussels. It's a think tank of economists. And they said for Europe, and this is perfectly valid here in the Gulf, how can you increase your performance? And they gave, you have to act simultaneously on 3 factors. Increase funding, that's what I said before. Increase autonomy, because this way you increase the capacity of being competitive, and increase mobility and competition. And those have to come together, and it's a very interesting report. I encourage you to read it if you haven't read it yet. Third part in 4 parts, I encourage you to go to what I call the sustainable university. The sustainable university I see 2 points in sustainable. The first is economic. A university is not an enterprise, but a university has a budget. A university needs to be able to plan. And so the big question is to balance between program funding, finalized funding, and basic funding. And this is really a key issue. We are not here for funding, but without funding we can't do anything. And also the question of academic sustainability. And to be sustainable on the long term, and I was pleased to hear the ministers underline this, basic research is a central paradigm. Without research, universities lose their blood, lose their power. So, and the ministers said it, so I know you agree with this. And this way you can leave place for serendipity. Of course you have plans, you are targeting industries, you are targeting employment, but serendipity, just chance, is something that you have to favor too. And of course the question of long time. You don't get results in universities in 3 years. You get results over 10, 20, 30 years. So you have to be very patient. And of course, as usual, this implies that there is strong academic freedom. And I'll come back to this too. Key factors, I said this already, I'll just want to comment on the last line. The last line means that, of course, I pleaded that universities need a reasonable budget. But more than money, universities need trust. They need to be entrusted by the government, and they don't need to be controlled. They need, if each dollar, each real, each franc, each euros is accompanied by trust, it will go a long way. And I think this is something very, very important. The last part in this talk, and just so this way we'll try to keep our time, is coming back, in fact, to commenting my first slide about some of the goals that you have set up for 2030. And it's about the goal, the idea of the university in the global society. Two examples. This is an old slide already from the Association of American Universities. It's the group of the major research-intensive universities in the USA. What is interesting is the list. It shows that those universities advocate and put forward that they can act with the government in I won't read the list, but they can be experts and they can participate in policy making in all these different fields, and I won't read them in detail. So I encourage also that the governments, the agencies, the ministries should have academics as counselors, just to get an opinion. And then, of course, the government decides. But they can get a very enlightened opinion from the colleagues here or abroad. The second point is something I want to say when a lot of your objectives for 2030 are targeted towards economic contribution, and you are right. However, I want just to comment on this study by the equivalent, I would say, in Europe of the AAU, that's the LERU, the League of European Research Universities, which I had the pleasure to chair for 2.5 years. It's a group of 22 major research-intensive universities of Europe, like Cambridge, Oxford, Strasbourg, UCL, of course, and many others. We did a study on our contributions to the economy. And just I want you to concentrate on this circle, because usually you just think about knowledge transfer. The minister spoke, and they were right, about, for example, patents, knowledge transfer, okay. But the study shows that this is just 1/3 of the economic input of our universities. And for example, universities as institutions, like a company, they have employees which buy, which sell, which they have to travel, they have to be housed. It's 1/3, it's the core activity. And maybe more important, the graduate premium. The graduate premium definitions is that the difference between the salary you get before you go into the university and when you are graduated. There is a gap, of course, you earn more with a graduation. And this is 20% of the added value, of the economic added value is graduate premium. So what I encourage you and also our academic colleagues is not just to look at the economic contribution about the knowledge transfer, but to look at universities as global contributors to the economy, including in those fields which are not evident. And to conclude, coming back to your vision for 2030, a list of maybe thoughts which are a little bit messy, but I think it's important to I wanted to carry this to you. Some fundamentals. Again, diversity of universities. I have said it before, don't fall into the trap of trying to imitate some of the major universities that everybody speaks about. And especially, we can speak about this over coffee later, but rankings are not a fundamental goal. And I can comment on that. Rankings are a consequence of your policy, but not a fundamental goal. Again, you need research, and you need research universities, but you need also to support all the other models of universities. It's like in sports, you need to support all the level of the sport, not just the champions, otherwise you dry up all the system. The economical impact, you have to convince the academics that it's important, but you also have to be convinced, I'm speaking to the decision makers, that it's only a part of the activity of a university. And again, but this, I think you signed up on it, a country needs ambitious policies in order to make universities a national asset. And I already, this is a summary because I already spoke about it. I think the more you have science counselors, science advisor, the better you are in the general field of all the governance. And trust and autonomy are key ingredients in this complicated cuisine. And this leads to, and it's my final slide, to a part of a dilemma that we have to live with. We know the fundamental values of universities, but we also have pushes, attempts to see universities only as tools to achieve practical goals, economic while strategic. And this is really the dilemma. There is a contradictory effect of just going for knowledge and going for practical goals. I think it's not a dilemma. I think we have to bridge the gap between the two. And it's crucial for this that the role of universities are understood. And then you can promote changes in universities. And the challenge is also for the universities. I'm speaking a lot to the ministers, but the challenge is also for the universities. The universities have to be agile. They have to think forward. They should not refuse their role as agents of the economy. And they have to convince the politicians that they can act in a more modern, in a different way, while keeping their values. And my final word is precisely, while you have to plan for 2030, for 2050, or for eternity, I don't know, you cannot plan everything. And I would say the main role of a university, and the main role not only of the institution university, but the main role of the graduates of the university, is to prepare the country for the unpredictable and for the unknowable. And this is, in fact, what we should do. I thank you very much for your attention.